Welcome to the channel.
When it comes to like the commonalities,
personality traits, mindsets, anything like that.
There's so many. I think one of my favorite sayings is that billionaires think in decades, not days.
Wow.
And the reason why I love that one is I'll never forget. I was interviewing Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn. He sold LinkedIn to Microsoft for $26 billion. And I was asking him, I was like, Reid, if you were to start from zero and you had 1 year to make $1 billion, what would you do? And he stops me and goes, I never play a 1 year game. It's 10-year game minimum. Todd Graves, the founder of Raising Cane's, worth over $20 billion off of selling chicken tenders. I asked him a similar question. He goes, I'm worth $20 billion today, but what if I can be worth 30, 40, 50, 60 billion and I can help more people? What if my kids one day can continue to grow that? So he only thinks in generations. And that is such a common thread that I've seen in the most successful people. And I love this idea of macro patience and micro urgency. So in the macro patience, you have to understand that this is, to build anything great, this is going to take a long time, right? You know this from building companies, all the people, your friends and the people that I've interviewed, and even just in us and building a 8-figure business off of street interviews, our first 3 to 4 years, we, like Elon Musk says, you have to eat glass, and entrepreneurship is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. There's a couple years where, you're going to have to eat for a while. And that's exactly, what it was. So we had that belief in us that it's going to take a long time, but we have to be patient. One of the things that my generation struggles with is instant gratification. They see people on social media driving a nice car, wondering, man, I got to get that. I got to get that. I got to get that. But it's like, it doesn't just come overnight, especially if you're going to if it comes super, super quickly, chances are it's going to be gone like that.
You're right.
Or there's something isn't great necessarily involved with it. But then micro urgency, going back to what we were saying, can you say that quote for me again about being coachable?
Coachable, the speed of instruction.
Oh, I love that because in the short term, it's taking massive action every day. And that's another commonality. I have so many billionaire contacts in my phone. And Matt Ishbia, who's the owner of the largest mortgage company in the world, he owns the Phoenix Suns. Great guy. And when I asked him what he notices about all his billionaire friends, they all text back instantly. They all respond instantly. You could email him, text him. He's responding instantly. And I feel like, that is something that I have noticed, that if I shoot them a text, they'll let me know within Morgan & Morgan, like it's a very similar thing. So I think that
bro, you're so brilliant for 23.
Oh,
I have to tell you,
that,
my
man.
son's here, that, and he's out back there wowing because whether my net worth is B or just close or whatever, it's getting there. And it's one of the traits that I pride myself on most is I get back to people. And I actually can't go to sleep at night until I've replied to the people I'm supposed to reply to. And so these little macro things. Can I tell you one thing I observe about you? First off, people listening would forget that you're 23. Right, with this level of wisdom. And by the way, I ask a question, it's reflexive. This is not stuff he's got to dig deep for. Like he owns this stuff now. Speak to this just for a second. Even though these are just pocket meetings, some of them are in your phone and you're knowing them. Here's what I see on you. I believe proximity to somebody changes your frequency with them. Meaning, I believe people, let's just take business. You're interviewing successful business people. Now, I don't know whether they've got a good family life or not. That's a totally different situation. So I'm not saying these are people to emulate one way or the other. Some probably yes, some probably no. But when you get into proximity to other people, their vibrational frequency, the way they think, the way they live, the way they operate, impacts you just through association. There's a piece of this. When I look at you, I'm like, I can see the associations having poured into you. So from a confidence standpoint, you're a guy who grew up, part of your life, like as I read it, kind of a military brat. You grew up overseas for a while. This is not a dude who grew up in Palm Beach with money. Now looking at you, you look like a rich guy. You got a rich guy's haircut and all that. But the truth of the matter is you didn't grow up that way. So has just been being in the proximity of these people, do you think unknowingly, maybe even unconsciously, changed the way you view you in terms of your confidence level?
100%. I like to talk in sound bites like I think you do as well. I love the saying that the world is overly cruel to shy men and it rewards the courageous. I think that when it comes to being able to attach yourselves to successful people, they can tell whether you're kind of like hesitant versus like that confident person, being able to approach them. And in a sense, the hyper successful people, they can see part of themselves in you. But I think it has definitely had an effect on me. But I think it does stem actually from an early age. I would say that's one attribute that I've kind of always had, and may have been a big reason why the channel became so successful in a short amount of time, is because I was always really confident to approach people. You know, my dad, he ran the largest overseas military base in the world.
Awesome.
He was the garrison commander at Camp Humphrey. So from an early age, I was there 6 to 10. I was, going to these events where he was speaking at, town halls and in the city in front of thousands of people. And, I was meeting a lot of the people he was meeting because, with the military, oftentimes, their families come with them. And so I think that from an early age, I had to realize that the way that that's the right way to act, and also observing my dad and the way that he interacted, he was a great leader, very respected on the military bases that he was kind of running. And so that had a big effect on me. Mm-hmm. And then another thing another thing that I do growing up, I was in Boy Scouts, so I became an Eagle Scout, and I learned public speaking then and how to communicate. And my scout troop that I was in the DC, Virginia area was ran by a bunch of ex-Marine guys. Mm-hmm. So I had those little ounces of experience between observing my dad and interacting with some of the top military people, government officials that he was bumping elbows with, shaking hands with, and then also in Scouts. And so that kind of, I think, translated to us being able to build the channel and knowing how to interact and operate the same way that I feel like successful people
really great do. Insight, James. Yeah. So is there a hack so those people listeners go, hey, I'd like to meet some successful people and bring them into my life? Or is there you're walking up to Tom Brady, you're walking up to Will Smith, and I don't know how many of these are orchestrated or not. I'm sure some are, and some are random. Mm-hmm. Walking up to some billionaire walking out of a lunch place in South Beach or whatever. Yeah. Is there something you do or say? Is it a body language thing? Is there anything you would teach somebody to appropriately approach somebody whom they'd like to kind of draw into their world a little bit but don't know how to do it? Such
a great question, and extremely, I think, useful for people, because I think that is the ultimate cheat code in life, right? I like to say mentorship is like wisdom without the wounds. If you can attach yourself to just a couple very, very, very successful people, that is more valuable than any college degree, than any sort of, general education that I think people can get, right? Just all it takes is a couple, hyper successful people to kind of get in your corner and be willing to pour into you. But I think it starts with a couple of things, right? Like when we started the channel initially, we didn't have any connections, right? My dad was a military guy. He wasn't connected in the business world. And so it was us literally organically just going up to people, cold approaching them off the street. The first billionaire that we ever interviewed was at South by Southwest in 2022. It was Mark Cuban. And I went up to him after he was speaking at an event with my brother, and I said, hey, Mark, my brother and I, we started a channel at the University of Texas where we're just interviewing successful people trying to get advice to the younger generation. Now, what did I say there? I started a channel at the University of Texas. Why? I'm borrowing that authority because it's bigger than me.
Very good.
Right? So if you can find a way to borrow that authority, and a lot of people will see my interviews now where, yes, Tom Brady was a setup interview. Tom Cruise was a setup interview. Will Smith was a setup interview. Shaq, setup interview, right? And a lot of our stuff now is definitely a lot more set up. But I'm a big believer in keeping the main thing the main thing. The thing that got us here was that off-the-street content. So, for example, I went out to London last week. I didn't set up a single interview. I went right to Mayfair, which is the wealthiest part, and just went up to probably several hundred people within a week, just getting some incredible content. Nothing set up. Probably more rejections than actual interviews. And the reason being is because people love to see that content. And a big thing that people see in our interviews that they love, whenever I get feedback from people that love my content, they will say, I love how you're able to reel them in. They don't want to do the interview at first, but then they want to do it. And if you notice, like one of the things that I'll typically say is I have a channel with 21 million followers. Yes. I've interviewed X amount of billionaires in the last 4 years. We need 1 minute. I'm a huge advocate that credibility kills all bad attitudes. That's probably my favorite saying ever. Credibility kills all bad attitudes. Like I remember, Tom Brady, Michael Rubin, a year before I was able to interview them, it was either rejection or they took it to them and they didn't want to do it, or it was just crickets. But then when you interview a Tom Cruise, now it's like, okay, now we can talk. Now we'll get in front of you. So I think that is a big thing for people. Like, don't necessarily get discouraged if like the first time it's a rejection or a no. In business, whether it's you're trying to do a podcast or anything, trying to get a prospective client, it may not just be the right time. Maybe you need to kind of work on yourself more. Maybe you need to build up your credibility a little bit more. But I think that that's ultimately one of the things to do. Now, if you're somebody that has no credibility whatsoever, right? In our case, we started just attaching ourselves to the University of Texas. Hey, we started a channel here. Then it was, okay, now we could attach ourselves to millions of followers, X amount of billionaires interviewed. So we don't necessarily struggle with having to cling to that. But I always like to tell people, and I'll just use Tom Brady as the example. Tom Brady's the greatest football player of all time. can I add value to Tom Brady's life to become a better football player? Absolutely not. But maybe there is something, maybe it's content, maybe there is something that I could disproportionately do better than Tom Brady. Maybe it's somebody playing the piano. Granted, maybe Tom Brady has no interest in learning how to play the piano. I'm just trying to put it in perspective for people that if you have some sort of like skill set that is like very, very unique, and you can double down and become one of the best in the world at that, you can attach that to people. In our case, one of the reasons why we were able to attach ourselves to so many people is attention. That's one of the most valuable things in today's world. A lot of rich guys, like, they have more money than they can do. Now they want to give back. Maybe now they want legacy. Now they want attention. Now they want media. So that's kind of been our unique skill set that we've been able to add on to other people. And I think that this is very important as well because, you know, another one of my favorite interviews I've ever done is Robert Herjavec, the shark from Shark Tank. Incredible interview and such a nice guy as well. And I remember asking him the question, Robert, what do you think is more important, what you know or who you know? 95% of people are going to tell you who you know is more important. But he said the biggest piece of, and again, I don't like to cuss, but I'm going to say it verbatim with what he said. The biggest piece of bullshit advice that he's ever heard people say is that who you know is more important. Because you and I both know that if you are on a high level at all cylinders, you're a busy guy, you have all the opportunity in the world, you are not just going to give your time to somebody unless they have some sort of like value that they can offer you. Now, maybe you do meet that, you know, young person. You can see the fire in his eyes and you can see that he's got a lot of potential. Maybe he just needs somebody to pour into him or her and you ultimately do that. But 95% of the time, it's like you're going to ultimately be with people that are going to make you better, you know, add value to your life, and vice versa. You're going to do the same. Life gives to givers and it takes from takers. So big advocate in giving back and giving to other people. But the lesson there was that you have to be, if you become the brand, if you build it, they will come, right? If you become super successful and great at something, people are naturally going to come to you. And then it's like, you don't have to worry about, you know, who you know. So I know that was a bit long-winded.
No,
but
I actually think there was brilliance in there, as frankly, every answer you've given. That idea of associative credibility.
Yeah.
University of Texas in the very beginning. Now it's the size of the show, but it could also be a cause you affiliate with. You know 100%. That you're American Cancer or whatever it might be, or the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So if you have associative credibility, if you don't have it yourself, and creating that, we even do that in branding in my companies now. When we get to a certain level, we'll associate with the PGA Tour.
If you like this, subscribe and drop a comment.